When Dolores arrived at my daughter's birthday party, she didn't bring a gift, a card, or even a balloon. Just that oversized purse she carried everywhere and a permanent frown etched across her face. She stepped inside as if she were entering enemy territory, scanning the decorations with narrowed eyes. To her, paper butterflies dangling from the ceiling were clutter, not magic. The house was glowing with little details Rosalie and I had spent days preparing. The lace tablecloth that once belonged to my grandmother. Vintage plates I'd rescued from thrift shops, each with its own story. A cake that had taken me until 2 in the morning to finish, 3 layers of vanilla with strawberry filling, crowned with a fondant unicorn. To us, it was joy. To Dolores, it was fuel for her disapproval. She didn't waste time. By the time we gathered to sing Happy Birthday, she stood beside the trash can, holding the cake like it was contaminated. And, just like that, she dumped it in. Coffee grounds, eggshells, and our daughter's dream dessert, all ruined in seconds. The room went silent. Parents stared in disbelief. Children froze, their voices caught in their throats. My husband, Craig, stood uselessly, hands half raised from clapping, too timid to intervene. And Rosalie, my 7-year-old, stared at the wreckage of what should have been the happiest moment of her young life. But instead of crying, something changed in her eyes. Rosalie had been secretly preparing something for weeks. Every time I peeked into her room, she'd quickly minimize the screen on her tablet, pretending to play with virtual pets. She called it her special project. I assumed it was homework. I couldn't have been more wrong. That afternoon, while Dolores smirked over the destroyed cake, Rosalie walked calmly to her tablet, wiped her tears, and turned to her grandmother. "Grandma," she said evenly, "I made you a video. Want to see it?" The living room went still again. Dolores, curious and smug, nodded. She had no idea what was about to happen. The TV flickered to life as Rosalie cast her tablet screen. The first slide appeared, Project Dolores. Photos filled the screen, every birthday, holiday, and family gathering from the past 3 years. Dolores scowling at decorations. Dolores criticizing meals. Dolores ignoring Rosalie's drawings. Dolores refusing to smile in a single picture. Then came the recordings. Short video clips Rosalie had secretly captured. Dolores calling her too spoiled for gifts. Dolores telling me my cooking was inedible. Dolores mocking Craig for being too weak to be the man of the house. The room grew heavier with every word, every sneer Dolores had assumed no one remembered. Parents shifted uncomfortably. Children whispered to each other. Craig's face turned red, not from embarrassment, but from shame at having let his mother's cruelty slide for so long. And Rosalie, my brilliant little girl, stood there tall, narrating over the footage. "This is why I don't like birthdays anymore. But I made this so everyone can see why." When the video ended, silence lingered like smoke after a fire. Dolores stood frozen, face pale, eyes darting at the parents who now looked at her with disgust. The woman who had always controlled the narrative suddenly had none. One father broke the silence with a low whistle. Another mother muttered, "Unbelievable." The children stared at Dolores the way kids look at villains in fairy tales, both fearful and satisfied that she'd been exposed. Rosalie closed her tablet, folded her arms, and said softly, "Now everyone knows." That was it. Revenge, pure and perfect. Dolores left without a word, clutching her purse as though it could shield her from the stares. She didn't look back. And the best part? Rosalie wasn't broken. She didn't need a cake to feel celebrated. She had taken control of her own story and written the ending herself. That day, my daughter didn't just turn 7. She taught us all a lesson in courage and justice. Dolores had spent years tearing us down. But in less than 10 minutes, Rosalie proved that sometimes the sweetest revenge doesn't come from sugar and frosting, it comes from truth. The fallout. Word of what happened at Rosalie's party spread faster than icing melting in the sun. The parents who witnessed Dolores's humiliation didn't just keep it to themselves. They shared it with other parents, neighbors, and even mutual friends on social media. Within days, snippets of Rosalie's Project Dolores were circulating online. The retired bank manager who once commanded respect in her community was suddenly infamous. Not for her career, not for her accomplishments, but for being the grandmother who destroyed her granddaughter's birthday cake and belittled her family. At church the following Sunday, no one greeted her. People whispered behind her back. The women she used to gossip with avoided eye contact. A few bold ones told her directly, "You should be ashamed of yourself." Dolores, who thrived on appearances, couldn't bear it. Meanwhile, quiet, conflict-avoiding Craig, finally cracked. He admitted to me late one night that seeing his daughter take a stand had shaken him. "Bethany," he said, "I've been weak. I let her control us for years. But Rosalie, she's braver than me." For the first time in our marriage, Craig stood up to his mother. He called her on the phone, voice steady but firm. "You're not welcome in our house anymore. Not at birthdays, not at holidays. Until you can respect my wife and daughter, you don't get to be part of their lives." Dolores tried to argue, tried to guilt-trip him, but Craig didn't budge. The call ended with her in tears and him strangely lighter, freer. Rosalie, on the other hand, blossomed after the incident. Her teacher told me she'd written an essay titled "The Day I Stood Up for Myself," and it won first place in a school writing contest. She read it aloud at assembly, and the applause echoed louder than any birthday song ever could. And me? I stopped apologizing for trying to create joy in a house Dolores had tried so hard to darken. I realized that revenge isn't always about getting even. Sometimes, it's about showing the truth so clearly that the person who caused the pain can no longer hide. Dolores had built her identity on control, but Rosalie had stripped it away in front of everyone. And the most poetic part? It wasn't me who orchestrated her downfall. It was the very child she thought didn't deserve celebration. From that day forward, birthdays in our house weren't just about cake or candles. They became a symbol of resilience, of family, of a little girl who refused to let cruelty define her. And Dolores? She never recovered her reputation. In the end, her own bitterness made sure she celebrated nothing but her own downfall. Dolores strikes back. Humiliation didn't sit well with Dolores. For weeks after the party, she went silent. No phone calls, no unexpected visits, no passive-aggressive comments. At first, I thought maybe she had finally gotten the message. I was wrong. One afternoon, Rosalie's school principal called me into the office. Sitting across from him, he cleared his throat uncomfortably before speaking. "Mrs. Harper," he began, "we received a complaint from your mother-in-law. She claims your daughter created defamatory material about her and distributed it publicly. She's demanding disciplinary action." Dolores had gone to the school board, trying to frame Rosalie as some kind of vindictive troublemaker. She wanted Rosalie punished, maybe even suspended, for exposing her. I felt a surge of anger, but before I could speak, the principal leaned forward. "Of course, we reviewed the so-called evidence. Frankly, Mrs. Harper, your daughter's project was remarkable. It wasn't defamation. It was documentation. Honest, brave, and, frankly, inspiring." Instead of punishing Rosalie, the school decided to feature her project in a unit on media literacy, how children could use technology to tell their own stories and stand up to unfair treatment. Dolores's plan had backfired spectacularly. What she thought would ruin Rosalie's reputation only elevated her even higher. Parents praised her courage. Teachers used her work as an example. And Dolores? She was the villain in a lesson being taught to hundreds of children. When Craig heard about it, something inside him hardened. He drove to his mother's house, not to argue, but to end it once and for all. "You tried to destroy my daughter," he told her, voice shaking with anger, "and you failed. You don't get another chance. You're out of our lives, permanently." He returned home that night lighter than I had ever seen him. And for the first time in years, I believed him. Dolores, stripped of family and reputation, had nothing left but her pride, and even that was crumbling. The woman who once ruled every room with fear now couldn't step into a grocery store without overhearing whispers. Parents from the party avoided her. Friends cut her off. And Rosalie? She didn't gloat. She didn't mock. She simply carried on, stronger, brighter, as if the ugliness had never touched her. That's when I realized the truest form of revenge wasn't the humiliation or even the exposure. It was watching Dolores fade into irrelevance, while the child she tried to crush grew into someone powerful enough to silence her forever.